Welcome to Limitless You, the podcast that empowers you to tap into your extraordinary potential. I'm your host, Taryn Dube, and I am thrilled to embark on this journey called You. Hello, and welcome to Limitless You. I am thrilled to be here today with you. Thank you for joining in. And today I have a very, very special guest. And I know I'm going to be saying that every single week, but today my guest is extremely special. I think that I have gone back probably close to 25 years with this person, and she was one of my bridesmaids at my wedding, so you know how close to my heart this person is to me. And funny fact, I've gone back even further with her husband. When I was probably around 12 years old, her husband and I became friends. So it is an absolute joy and honor for me to introduce Katy. Katy is like my sister, not my biological sister, but my absolute friend. And Katy, welcome to Limitless You podcast.
Thank you.
I am so excited
Great
to have
to
you
be
here. I was thinking yesterday, I was like, oh my goodness, we have been friends for the longest time. I think I would definitely call you one of my oldest friends in not in age.
In both ways, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do. We go back a long way. It's very cool.
We do. So we first met in Zimbabwe, where you were just pouring into and changing lives in a charity in Zimbabwe, and I'm just you have just grown in leaps and bounds. You've gone through incredible strides from that moment where we became friends, and I know you've had an incredible journey in the process. But right now, so I'll just tell my people, you're originally from the UK, and but living in South Africa, which I'm in Durban, which I'm incredibly jealous about. Oh, Durban! Right now it's like -10.
Oh, here we're roasting.
Oh my goodness. You've worked with street children in Mozambique, urban communities in Zimbabwe. I know you've worked with homeless communities as well in Zim, and you absolutely fell in love with Africa, got yourself a South African husband, Tony, who's incredible. And then you were the head of thinking skills at St. Peter's School in Johannesburg. So I'm just letting our people know a little bit about where you are. And that's where you birthed and created a lot of what you do today, which is Thrive Together, which we're really going to be focusing on. So I want to begin to jump into really, what do you do? So tell us, what does Thrive Together mean? What is it? What do you do?
Okay. So yeah, I think where it was birthed is a great starting point. I was teaching at St. Peter's Boys' School in Joburg and was asked to write this diversity, equity and inclusion curriculum and then teach it to the boys. And I embarked on that task, and the curriculum was proving so successful, and we were seeing the boys' mindsets changing. And so I kept having teachers say, oh, Katy, you should get this into other schools in South Africa. And my response was, yeah, that would be great. But when do you find time to do that? So we relocated at the beginning of 2023 down here to Durban from Joburg. And in that relocation, I knew that I wasn't going to get another teaching post, but would try and get Thrive Together, get this curriculum into other schools. And that's how it started, but it's become workshops and teacher training and keynotes. And yeah, it's really just, it was the start of something that's been much bigger. But I think for me, the real passion or hope that I have is that if we can help children's mindsets change, then the challenges that my generation is having, they can be 30 years ahead of the game. Wow. If I was 30, that would be lovely. But they can be 30 years ahead of the game, and already be in that mindset space of better understanding our differences and our history. And yeah, so that we can thrive together across whatever backgrounds we have, whether it's culture, religion, just thriving with all our diversity.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I love that. I think I always think of like school places as an ideal, example of how children can work together and, don't see each other's differences. But I have my own children. I have four, and I know you have three as well. And it's not always the case. And you live in a melting pot of cultures. South Africa has just got such an incredible history of hurt and pain, and also the ability to overcome and to change things. So it's a great place for you to be working this out. But when you say like changing their mindsets, I think we don't really, what does that mean? Like what are some of the outworkings that you see in the school setting where mindsets need to be changed? Because I think kids, I think we can assume that kids don't see color, kids don't see size, kids don't see status. So tell me some of what you do see in the school places.
So I think there are several elements to it. And the one premise that I have, just in all my teaching, is that you can't push anything into anyone's brain. It has to be pulled in. And so we can teach things until we're blue in the teeth. We can tell children. I mean, I love the example of when, how many times have we said to our kids, you are so privileged. You have no idea how privileged you are. And what does it change?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And
I
so,
may have said
and
those
of
words
course it doesn't.
yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. It's they're quite routine words. And so how do we help students understand that, for that example, that they are privileged? And so a lot of my curriculum, we set up, I've set up uh, scenarios, exercises, activities, really hands-on, engaged activities, and through which children come to the realization for themselves that they are privileged. And so
Wow.
their reflections show, like, wow, I knew that I was privileged, but I didn't realize how much I was privileged. Or I used to think that most people had what I have. Now I realize that they don't. And so I think for me, that's been a big aspect of it, has been um, creating those spaces for children to their, pull in realizations, I guess, and internalize them for themselves. Um, Another element is just their understanding, and this is a lot of the work that I do with the teachers and adults as well. Understanding why we have different perspectives, and that it's based through our life experience. And so it's it my perspective and your perspective are different because of our different life experiences.
Yeah.
Um, but if I'd lived your life, whatever your life is, my perspectives would be the ones you hold. And so there's helping children understand that there's not a right and a wrong perspective, but they're shaped through life experience.
Yeah.
And that has really changed how we see kids interact with each other when there are those difficult moments where someone does say something offensive to another. We're seeing students, instead of saying, oh, they must be expelled, they can't say that, we're seeing that they don't understand my life and they don't see my experience, and seeing students that actually want to sit down and talk about it and
Wow.
help each other understand their different perspectives and their different life experiences, rather than just want to quit the whole scenario and get rid of the offender. And that's been really constructive in school contexts. Yeah.
Wow, I love that approach. And I think when you do just get pushed to the side or you do just get disciplined, there is no learning, there's no growing, there's no understanding. Yeah, so I know you've taught dozens of workshops, you've worked into so many different schools. What are some great like wow moments where you're teaching kids and you're also teaching the teachers? So what are some experiences you've had where like they got it, they understood?
Yeah, so I have this one activity that I do in all of my workshops where we actually put on a pair of paper glasses and we put lenses in according to ways in which we identify in the world
Oh, wait,
and
I'm so
understand.
excited. You're going to share this because I see your photos all the time of people wearing their glasses. And I want to know, like, what is this about?
Yeah, it's all over everything I do. Um, so we put in lenses according to our different life experiences, and then we come to this moment where I ask if people can see clearly,
Hmm.
and people say, "No, I can't see a thing." And I speak then about the irony of the fact that we all think we see the world so clearly, yet we see it through our life experience, and that's the
Hmm.
lens through which we see the world. And so then I unpack a couple of examples for Tony and myself. Mine usually I talk about the fact that my mother tongue is English, is an international language. And I didn't ask for that. I didn't do anything to get it, but it has given me such an easy ride in life. And it's
Hmm.
given me core beliefs about myself that I just have to be me, and people adjust to me, and all subconscious.
Yeah.
But that's been my journey and my reality. But once I've become conscious of that, it helps me then understand the perspective of someone who's mother tongue has not been had the same value in society as mine, and someone who's
Hmm.
had to learn another language in order to be heard or seen or to be able to get anywhere. So that exercise for me, that activity is always. I hear little gasps around the room, like, oh, that's deep. Or and so again, it's something we know, but in that
Hmm.
moment, there becomes this like internalized revelation that I just love. That for me has been an absolute highlight. The activity actually started as one that I did with the kids in the curriculum, and then I was like, actually, I think I need to do this with the adults in my workshops. That's a big highlight. Um, and there are so many. I think the reflections when I do student workshops, or at different points in the curriculum when they reflect, reading kids' reflections is just amazing.
Hmm.
One that stands out for me was a grade 11 who, at the end of a workshop, wrote, um, "I realized that we are all brown." And then like
Wow.
capital letters, and then we are not black and white, we are all brown. And I just, it amazed me that that could be the revelation that someone was taking out age what, 16, 17.
Yeah.
But again, I think what I keep seeing is that we make so many assumptions that children understand that, for example, race is a human construct that was created to divide us. But actually, no one is white like the paper, no one's black like a cell phone screen.
Hmm.
We are all shades of brown. And so these little moments, I think, for me, of the realizations of truth, um, that then help break down the mindsets that have been, I don't know, passed on, passed
Yeah.
down, that just haven't been interrogated, perhaps, haven't been questioned before.
Hmm.
Those for me are the real little nuggets that
Wow.
make this so enjoyable.
I love
Yeah.
that. Do you find that the teachers are like, do they rally behind this? Are they excited about this? Or do you find kickback, like resistance? Because I know, teachers have spent years teaching whatever they're teaching and adding a new curriculum, like adding new work to them, I imagine can be burdensome sometimes in that regard. How are you finding the reception to your curriculum?
So I think that's been one of the most amazing things is that there's been an incredibly open reception of it. Um, I think that we're at a place in South Africa where schools have been knowing that they need to change, and have been, um, whether it's because of compliance or whether it's from a heart motivation, we can talk about that, but knowing that they need to change, the transformation, diversity and inclusion policies are in place, and we need to be doing this and that and the other. And our schools have been becoming more multiracial, um, but they haven't been becoming more multicultural. So we haven't been changing then what happens in the schools. Um, we haven't I think schools haven't felt equipped and empowered to know how to journey. And so I started in the curriculum in another few schools this year. And one school, the principal said to me afterwards, Katy, I don't have words for this. He said, this is like manna to us.
Wow.
Um, and for me, I find it very humbling when people say stuff like that. But I know that for teachers who they want to be helping the next generation do better than the past generations, but they don't know how because they themselves are still trying to have these conversations. I often say that for teachers, they're in a spot where they know that they need to have the conversations with the children that they're still uncomfortable talking about with their friends around the dinner table. And so, how do we
That's good.
empower and equip the teachers to be able to have these conversations with an open mind, with this reality that there's not a right and wrong necessarily. There's a different perspectives. Right and wrong comes in for me once we're violating human rights. Otherwise, you're allowed to believe differently to me. You're allowed to see the world differently to me. We are allowed to disagree.
That's good.
So long as no one's human right is being violated. And so that I think gives the teachers this safety net of, okay, we're allowed to disagree in the class, and that my perspective as a teacher is not the right perspective, it's a perspective. And so that's all part of the training before they implement the curriculum. And so I've found that teachers are generally really excited that they've now got something like the lesson plans are all there with all the little notes about what you might not see and what you might need to think about, and then slides so that it's prepared as much as possible for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love everything you're saying. I mean, you and I have spoken so much, but we almost never talk about the nitty-gritties of your
Yeah,
curriculum. So I'm learning
yes.
so much from this. This week I was listening to Adam Grant, his book Think Again, and in the book he describes how getting to know one person from a different race or a different demographic is not always as helpful to our stereotypes as we think it would be, because that just allows us to get to know that person, and we often create an example in our heads of like, well, they're an exception to the rule. We may not verbalize that in our mind, but I think it's, you often hear it. You and I have definitely heard it through other people. It's like, oh well, he's not, you're not white. I mean, my kids say that to me all the time, like, you're not white, mom, you're just, or you're not black, you're not this type of black, or you're not this type of brown, or that sort of thing. So I know that you also how do you overcome that, like in a school setting? Because a lot of the schools that you particularly work into are private schools, and I know certainly from our husband's history, there's definitely that, there's a private school type of person, as opposed to, how do we get past that, where we create people as an exception to the rule as opposed to seeing a whole demographic of people?
Mm, that's so good. I'm going to share a quote here. I don't know if you've come across Chimamanda Adichie, and she talks about the danger of the single narrative, that we take one person and then assume that everyone from that same cultural background or religious perspective or whatever is then thinks the same way. And one of her quotes is, "The problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story."
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, I think that kind of encapsulates what you're saying, that we can't say, I can't say that, well, Tony's life experience has been this, and so this is how all Black Zulu men feel about this situation, because everyone's unique. So in our curriculum, excuse me, I've built the curriculum so it's really foundations, building on what's gone before. So we start by looking at this idea of Ubuntu and that we're all connected to each other and no man is an island. And then we look at our individual identities, which gives us the framework through which we can then talk about our collective identities. And so once we're talking about collective identities, we can see that we are part of so many different collective identities. And we can be part of a minority one minute and part of a majority another, feel that we belong in this collective, feel that we don't quite belong in that one. In the high school curriculum, we're actually, in the primary school, we use a pizza to think of like the different slices of pizza that makes us up. In the high school, we use a playlist, and then we think about which parts of your playlist, which tracks do you skip or do you amplify in different contexts, and which do you turn the volume right down, because actually in this context I don't want anyone to know about that part of me. And why would we do that, and what does it mean to be your authentic self, where all your tracks are playing all the time, which is a bit of a thing that's not part of our storytelling, isn't it? I mean, that's hilarious, because Toby used to be able to sing one song and listen to another at the same time. But that's this idea of we all have these multiple tracks in our lives playing consistently, and what do you turn up and down, and becoming conscious of why. But I think that's where, once we're talking about that with children and students, then we get to a place where we can start understanding that you can't speak about a collective as a whole, as a complete whole. And so I introduced the idea that there's three magic words: most, many, and some. And so if we talk about English tea, English people all drink tea. Yeah, English people drink so much tea. It's like, well, apart from the ones that don't. They say South Africans, I often hear, South Africans eat so much meat. Well, apart from the vegetarians and the vegans, they don't contribute to that. So if we can start saying most English people that I've met drink a lot of tea, many English people drink a lot of tea, some South Africans eat a lot of meat, many of the South Africans I've met love to buy every weekend. Then as soon as we use those three words, we change what is a false statement, because it's about a whole collective, and we make it our lived truth. And so immediately I'm using examples of tea and whatever, but a classic one is that, Black people are always so late. Well, if they're on time, they're not. Some are like meticulous about time, and others, I've been to family weddings that they started 3 hours late. So we can't make these generalizations, but alongside that, understanding that we do make assumptions, and it's okay to make assumptions. So I walk into a lot of training spaces and there's this surprise that, hang on, we thought we were going to get a Black Zulu woman, and we've got this white English girl. What's going on? Then you can see the complete confusion as I'm introduced that this really is her. I said, it's okay to make the assumption that I'm going to be a Black Zulu woman. because I'm the only white Mthethwa that I've ever met. Like, I would expect me to be black. So, understanding again that we make assumptions, and the making the assumption isn't always the problem. Can be, depends what its roots are, but becoming aware of the fact that we're making them and becoming conscious of the assumptions that we make, and then questioning them and thinking, are they based in any validity, or yeah, am I believing a mistruth?
Katie, that is profound. That is, in this moment, you have helped me, because we have some situations in Canada where a lot of our immigration policies have changed recently, and a lot of those policies have been rooted in particular demographics that seem to have abused the system, or what's been available. And my husband's in immigration, and so we want to talk about it in our house and talk about the effects of what has happened within the immigration system, but we're also so conscious of not wanting to stereotype a certain demographic of people, and also what are our children hearing, like what are our children hearing us say about certain groups of people, because there are, in the immigration, there are large chunks of people that come in on different programs and things like that. And I've really been battling over the past couple of months, like, how do we talk about this without putting in all of these people do this, and it's these people that are making this problem, and like, how do we talk about that but being sensitive that it's not all these people. So you've literally just helped me in a moment of how we can talk about things like this at the dinner table of, most, many, some. Is that what you said? Most, many, some?
Yeah. I usually say some, many, most. Yeah.
Sorry. It's the other way around.
No, I got it wrong the first time round. Not that there's a right and a wrong, right? It's just word order. And I do think it's so helpful, because you can say, many of this group that I've worked with have this, or have done that, or have experienced such and such. It just becomes more accurate. And I think a lot of the stuff, comes back to truth. Like, in thriving together, I think a lot of the reasons why, the things that stop us from thriving together, is not understanding the truth. So the truth about someone else's life experience or perspective, or getting defensive when we hear about someone else's life experience, as if we're to blame, even though we weren't there, and are kind of learning to override that natural defensive response. We're like, okay, I'm safe. I mean, that's a massive part of what I do. Just creating safe spaces for these conversations, so that you have to feel psychologically safe to be able to talk about your life experiences, and to hear others' life experiences, and not immediately respond and react and defend. And so, at the beginning of workshops and the beginning of the curriculum every year, we write a journey agreement of, these are the things that we agree on, so that on our journey we're safe, and we know that we're going to arrive safely at the end of each lesson, at the end of a workshop, whenever it is. Because I know that people have experienced DEI work and have left the room feeling just wounded or exposed, that they've told their story, and then nothing else has happened. It's just been opening a raw wound, really, and then it's just left. And so really needing to make sure in this space, I think, that we honor people's vulnerability, and just create a really safe space, that you're allowed to share what you're comfortable with, that we can't make people share, but also that we've created a context that we're all going to listen to seek to understand. And again, it comes back to that lenses, right? Once you understand that your life experience is so different to mine, but just as valid as mine, like, that's a game changer.
Wow. So, as we begin to land this plane, I feel like I could talk to you for hours about this. Yeah, I'm always like, Katie, we talk about so many other things. When can we find a day just to talk about this? But
Need a coffee.
um, a lot of the incredible people that listen to this podcast are they career women, they're mums, they're dads, they're business leaders, they're doing so many different things. So we're not in a school setting where we have to, I do have some teachers, but we don't have an opportunity to start literally from ground zero. What would you say to us? So I'm back and forth. I'm in the church office, I'm at home with my kids, I'm coaching people, I'm doing workshops in companies. How do I incorporate Thrive Together into my already formulated and opinionated adult self?
I honestly think it comes down to taking the time to see each human being as a human being who is of equal value and worth to yourself. So Brené Brown has a beautiful quote. She says, "No one belongs here more than you."
Hmm.
Um, and and I love that, and that speaks so much to our needing to see our value. No one belongs here more than you. But I then took it and crossed out parts and changed it to "No one belongs here less than you."
Hmm.
And that that for me,
Wow.
I think, is the power of understanding. I want to say understanding my place in the world, that there's nobody is of less value than me. And so, uh,
Hmm.
yeah, whoever it is that you bump into, and whatever job it is that they do, I love telling the story that my first ever job, out of school, I was spending time in the morning. I was a dancer at the time, and I was choreographing dances and whatever. And I'd got a part-time job in the afternoon doing some admin, but I chose to do a part-time job in the morning from 7 to 9 a.m. cleaning offices before they opened, so that I could have the morning free to myself.
Hmm.
Um, and I used to clean the toilets, clean the urinals, empty the waste paper baskets, vacuum the floors. And particularly in our South African context, people are often quite shocked by that.
Hmm.
Um, but I said there was nothing demeaning about doing that job because I was choosing to do it. And I think we've sometimes placed value on people according to the jobs that they do and the scenarios we see them in.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for me, just knowing that it doesn't matter where you are in terms of your socioeconomic status, doesn't matter, yeah, whether you speak the same language even, or whether you can identify much with someone's life experience, to see them as an individual
Hmm.
is who is of equal worth to yourself. Um, and conveying that in some way, asking them about their family, um, just greeting them, and saying, "Have you had a lovely day?" Or
Hmm.
um, I I think that the world needs more of that, just
Yeah.
seeing each other. In isiZulu, we say, as a greeting is "Sawubona" or "Sanibonani," which means "I see
Hmm.
you."
I see
Um,
you.
and I think there's a lot of power in that. I see you,
I agree.
seeing everyone.
Oh, wow. I agree with you so much. I know it's become a very important part of my life to stop. Like when I'm, at the bank or I'm at the grocery store, and I just did it yesterday, and just the look of shock on the teller's face when I'm like, "How are you today?" And I emphasize the "you," and they're like, "Sorry," like, are you asked? And
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
yesterday was interesting because the person in front of me was on their phone whilst they were checking out with their groceries, and the teller was trying to ask them, "Do you want a bag? Like, would you like this?" And the person was she was in a very intense phone call I'm assuming from what I could hear the one side, and like she was just completely oblivious of the teller, like taking her groceries and scanning them and everything. And I saw the face of the teller of like, oh, okay, you know, it was just like, it's just another woman just going through. And then she got to mine, and I was on my phone, and I stopped and I put it down, and I'm like, how are you today? And she was just like, oh, I'm okay, thank you. You know, like, it really caught her by surprise. And listen, I have been the other woman a gazillion times.
Yeah.
Of going through with my phone on. But it's just that
great,
seeing people, right? Like, that ability to see people is so important. So grateful for our conversation today. I really am. I think you've just been incredible. Please tell me that in the near future you're going to do like an open webinar where all of us who are not teachers and not in South Africa can come and jump in and listen to the incredible truths you have to teach.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of plans. There's lots I would like to do with Thrive Together. And you've helped me be my limitless me. And yeah, just believe that I can actually make these things happen and put into practice all these ideas that I have whilst juggling motherhood and family life and everything else. But yeah, I see the need, and I see people's hearts and the desire to create spaces that are spaces where we can thrive together. So I hear you. Webinar. Here we go.
I'll just pop that in there. But I do. If anybody wants to get in touch with Katy or learn more about her workshops and how she works into schools, I've included her link in the description of this podcast. So yeah, please get in touch with Katy. Let her know that you want to change the environment in your school or your workplace. I know there's lots of schools, even just in the Southern African region, of people that listen. So you might be going cross-border soon, which will be exciting. But seriously, thank you so much. I am so grateful for your time. And what an encouragement to all of us that we can make a difference in our communities, our families, just the way we talk and the way we treat other people. So Katy, thank you. And please don't stop doing what you're doing. We love you, love you, love you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Love it.